Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees regular meeting for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Stewart.
Here.
Trustee Monahan.
Here.
Trustee Kermey.
Here.
Trustee Buckley.
Here.
Clerk Borba here. Treasurer Dorchevitz.
Here.
Supervisor Heisey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Pledge of Allegiance. How about Wendy Harless, Chairwoman of our Historic District Commission?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024.
Motion is made by Clerk Vorba, seconded by Treasurer Dorchevitz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approval of the consent agenda. Comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I will need a motion to approve the consent agenda and with a roll call vote.
Mr. Supervisor, I move for approval of the consent agenda for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024.
Motion is made by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Monahan. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Treasurer Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Buckley.
Yes.
Trustee Kermey.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart. Motion carries.
Okay, public comment limited to 3 minutes. Let's let Bob put the,
Well, are the people that we appointed here?
Mr. Pop is
Could they
here.
just stand up and
Mr.
turn around,
is
or
here.
so we know who they are?
Yeah, it's in their agenda. We have their,
Mr. Pop, Mr. Ladowicz.
yep. Okay. No, I mean,
That's
we're,
good.
this is, your resumes and bios are in the pack and they've been voted on, so we're gonna.
Started kindergarten and walk us through.
Yeah,
You learned to walk at 3 years of age. Oh.
public comment limited to 3 minutes.
Can everybody hear me? I'm Dale Bernhardt. With public safety being the primary purpose of government, the next highest purpose is to provide transparency to its citizens and make decisions that are consistent with the desire of its citizens. Aside from safety, our local government actions run by Mr. Heisey has been a complete failure. Poor decisions, some resulting in lawsuits, has been a hallmark of Mr. Heisey's tenure as supervisor. A movement is spreading through Michigan and other states acting on the actions of unresponsible government. A perfect example is the unwanted Goshen Chinese battery development in Big Rapids. Residents were kept completely in the dark until it was leaked. Residents took action and removed those responsible for the silent backroom deals. But Mr. Heisey likes to brag about being transparent. The gambling site was planned with decisions made well before it was presented to the Planning Commission. As quoted from the Goshen opposition leader, normally when a big development goes into a community, people seem to know about it. We knew nothing. Sound familiar, Plymouth? Promises were made to Myers also well before the public became aware. The sewage requirement for Salem Township was known back in 2017. Mr. Heisey was fully aware there was piping capacity for the sewage, but decided not to work to resolve the upcoming issue or inform the public. Remember, lack of transparency is by design. Mr. Heisey does not want you to know things, even though he is paid by you to work for you. Once the shroud of secrecy is penetrated, Mr. Heisey reverts to name-calling on social media. Goshen opposition have experienced the same playbook. Those in opposition to the battery plant became subject to a total slam campaign, including negative online posts. Again, sound familiar? So Mr. Heisey surrounds himself with appointees who contribute to his campaign fund. Examples include David Ladowicz as planning commissioner, his wife and daughter employed also. In exchange for employment and influence, Mr. Ladowicz will certainly vote with Heisey and continue to be secretive. Mr. Ladowicz is also being recommended by Mr. Heisey to the Zoning Board of Appeals, sort of like the fox watching the hen house. Also, Mr. Pop who contributed to High C's campaign, has been recommended by High C to sit on the Planning Commission. So can you see the pattern here? Secrecy is maintained by beholden appointed bureaucrats. What we see with High C is a whole series of bad decisions based on flawed assumptions. He makes decisions without constructive criticism input because all are beholden to him. No business can operate long this way, and neither can a township.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, Treasurer and Clerk, and rest of the Board of Trustees. My name is Paul Scholes. I'm a resident of Plymouth Township, Green Meadows. I have a few questions for the board this evening. When we make appointments, are we checking into the backgrounds of these people, their professional licenses, whether they're in good standing with those licenses, if they have filed bankruptcies before, if their debts are paid, if there's violations on those licenses? That's a concern to me, and I was wondering if you could answer that question. I also have a secondary question. I'd like to know what the status of the lawsuit against us by the Carlo brothers is today, its current status. Could you answer those questions?
We can address those later during board comments.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Paul, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I've been professionally trained for decades. 45-degree angle and swallow the microphone. I also get many comments from senior citizens who are citizens of Plymouth Township, and they cannot hear with clarity. Now, we spent $69,000 3 years ago on a new sound system. So I beg you to go 45-degree angle and swallow the microphone.
Would you like me to repeat what I said?
Thank you.
Thank you. I heard you, so.
I heard you.
I heard
Yeah.
you.
I heard you.
Okay, anybody else?
Where's the microphone? Right there? Okay.
We'll keep it close.
There?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start a new tradition at the trustee meeting tonight in regards to recognizing others in a positive frame of mind. First of all, I want to recognize a special recognition to the Plymouth Township Police Department. Chief of Police James Nattell. He is a wonderful, kind, and very professional person and an amazing chief, keeping the department running efficiently and keeping the residents of the township safe. Plymouth Township is fortunate to have Chief Nattell working here. The second person is Assistant Chief of Police Dan Kudra. Dan is a very special person and a shining example of a police officer. 19 years ago, on Easter morning, I woke up and my husband had passed away during the night. I called 911, and Dan Kudra was the officer that was assigned to come to my house. He stayed with me and my children until after the funeral home came and took my husband. He offered to help me if I ever needed anything. He has checked on me for the last 19 years at least 2 or 3 times a year. During COVID, he called or texted me every week to make sure I was okay and that I had food to eat. I don't know what my life would have been like without his support and caring. He is a very special person and has become a very dear friend. Dan really has been a blessing in my life. Plymouth Township is fortunate to have Dan working here. Please make sure he receives special recognition. My third person is Glenn Miller. Glenn is the amazing person that sits at the front desk. He is always smiling, kind, and handles his job professionally. When I'm at the Township Hall, I always stop to say hello to him. He cares about people and his job and takes time to make sure he understands you so he can help. The next department I would like special recognition for is the Plymouth Township Fire Department, run by Fire Chief Pat Conley. I had the pleasure of meeting Lieutenant Douglas Pickert and firefighter Matthew Zamuda. They came to my home to deliver and install the smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. From the very first phone call I received from Matthew until the equipment was installed. Matthew and Douglas were very professional, kind, and respectful. Matthew and Douglas are very valuable to your team, and your department should be very proud of both of them. Young men like them help to make the township a wonderful and safe place to be. Please recognize these two young men for their efforts. Thank you for allowing me to take this time to recognize the above individuals. I hope that others in this community and on the board realize that each of us are unique and an important piece of the whole puzzle, making the township great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Very touching, thank you, and that's what our community should be. Thank you very much, and extremely touching. Do I need to? And where is this microphone? It's this little thing? Yeah. I don't know how to swallow it, John. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what I need to do. Okay. Mary Pine, Kurt, you revealed your character when you scammed my husband and two other veterans at the senior scam meeting. My husband has addressed your dangerous and slimy technique. To clarify, since slimy seems to be your modus operandi, you then took this to the extreme with a throw dust in the air, wrap-up smear in which you threw your own political party and an individual under the bus with decades-old and unproven allegations. These are wasted dog whistles to keen-thinking residents as you actually revealed your desperate agenda to deflect from the real story warranting investigation, the $10 million lawsuit against Plymouth Township by Northville Downs. This ploy of being a victim is dishonest and not manly, not a good look. Having an outburst at the Northridge sewer plant meeting was another diversion from your role in contributing to the original problem, not a good look. Not showing up with any of your candidates at the library candidate forum actually confirms your lack of respect and unwillingness to answer questions, confirming the lack of independence of thought of your endorsed candidates. Not a good look. Instead, you put your energy into conniving behavior such as courting the firefighters union and angling to get rid of the free HVA ambulance service at a potential cost of millions of taxpayer dollars. Not a good look. This quote from Warren Buffett about choosing leaders brings perspective. We look for intelligence, we look for initiative or energy, and we look for integrity. And if they don't have the latter, the first two will kill you, because if you're going to get someone without integrity, you want them lazy and dumb. The initiative and energy without integrity that you, Gary Heitman, Jerry Vorva, and Dennis Cebulski have put into the Northville Downs debacle has resulted in the $10 million lawsuit, a very bad look. The residents are left to ponder on the second half of Warren Buffett's statement. Are you and Jerry applying this to your slate of recommended candidates and cynically using them? On 2/27/23, we emailed the Board of Trustees our thoughts on the proposed Northville Downs racetrack with cautions, questions, and red flags. John Stewart acknowledged this and along the way fully acknowledged that Northville Downs was not compatible with our community. Bob Dorashevitz eventually realized this and is now responsibly sharing data and discussing analysis. Thank you to both of them. A huge thank you to Chuck Kermey, lifelong resident, 7-term trustee, who cast the lone initial vote against the racetrack, always answered a phone call, has always been respectful to me as a female, has the community's best interest at heart, reads and understands the board packages, asks questions, analyzes, and thinks before voting with integrity. A youngish resident congratulated you, Kurt, on bringing together all ages, parties, and neighborhoods in their rejection of Northville Downs. This 16-month saga has revealed the issues to be nonpartisan. Residents moved here for a wholesome family community with green space, low crime, low traffic volume, not the east and west bookends of heavy traffic. The township should not be for sale. We need initiative and intelligence with integrity. That would be a good look.
Thank you. All right, anybody else?
Good evening, Board. Mary Ann Adams, longtime resident of the township. I am also here tonight to talk about Northville Downs. First, I've been in contact with the Michigan Gaming Control Board, and as of a few weeks ago, they have not taken any action to approve a new track license or the relocation of Northville Downs. In spite of what is being told to the media about NVD relocating to Fowlerville, it is far from a done deal. Second, regarding the $10 million plus lawsuit filed by NVD, they are also seeking to move forward in our township, reference number 181, page 49, letters D and E of the lawsuit. The township's answer to the lawsuit, which was submitted to the court on April 29th, requested the court dismiss the complaint. This request to dismiss was filed a month before your comments, Kurt, appeared in the Plymouth Voice on May 28th, stating, "It's a ridiculous argument, frankly, and we are going to be filing a motion to dismiss this case in the weeks ahead." We had already requested dismissal in our filing on April 29th. Township attorneys were in a teleconference this morning. The court wanted to become aware of the issues involved and to discuss the possibility of a settlement. If, as you state, Kurt, NVD is no longer interested in locating in our township, and if we are holding true to your stated votes to end all negotiations with NVD, then we should ask the court to specifically have item number 181 removed from the complaint. Otherwise, that leaves this township open to a gambling facility that is not welcome in our community. I've been in contact with the Eastern District Court of Michigan to make them understand how much the residents are interested in this case, its outcomes, and how many people the courtroom can hold for future public hearings. Finally, we are continuing to monitor any associated legislation, beginning the process to lobby for a change to the Michigan Gaming Act so that the rules for opening up a casino also applies to those establishments pretending to be a horse racetrack. Because for those of you who still want to pretend this is a horse racetrack, I will remind you once again that less than 4% of wagers were on live horse racing. Kurt, you solely made the decision for the roughly 28,000 residents at least 3 years prior to its occurrence, and likely longer, without so much as asking us about whether or not we wanted this subsidized gambling facility in our community. You put your personal aspirations and financial gain over what is best for our community. So by the looks of the document published today by the court, this case has not been dismissed. Is that correct? And you can answer that in your board comments. We are aware of the deadlines associated with this case, and we are watching it carefully, and we will be present at any public hearings going forward.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Suchak. I'm a member of the Plymouth Township Historic District Commission, and I wanted to just take a moment to recognize Wendy Harless. Wendy's done an outstanding job on leading the Historic District Commission, and several of our members are here, and we have a presentation later. But I also particularly want to recognize the work that she's done on the application to the National Park Services to recognize Plymouth Township, in particular Phoenix Mill, as an American World War II heritage city. We are hoping for success on our application and expect it, quite honestly. And we'll know later this year, but I just wanted to publicly recognize Wendy's work. Thank you. And while I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to let everybody know, again, I'm Carol Suchak. I'm running for Wayne County Commissioner in District 9. And District 9 encompasses most of Plymouth Township, most of Livonia, and Northville City and Northville Township. And that position is currently occupied by Terry Meraki, who is the incumbent. So as many of you may know, I retired a few years ago as the director of the Plymouth District Library. I have about 20 years of local government experience, and I look forward to the election this fall. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that, and make sure we had a chance to recognize Wendy. Thanks.
All right.
I have a question. Are you through talking?
Yeah.
I have a
Oh,
question
okay.
for you.
Sure, just one second. And I would be available after this meeting for if there's any questions. But I'll take yours now.
Does the owner of the Phoenix Mill know what you're doing, and are they involved?
They absolutely do know, and they absolutely are involved. Wendy had connected me with them. I had a tour about a month ago, and they are very
What-
excited about the process.
Yeah, let's explore that in greater detail when you do your presentation.
Sounds good.
Because there's a good story to be told there. Thank you. All right, anybody else?
Is this still public comment?
Yeah.
Good, very good.
Well, you've already had, you can come up later.
Come up? I'll go later.
Yeah.
Where's the microphone? Ooh. Hey, John, yell at me if I get too soft. Okay, hi, I'm Bill Pine. I've been watching the board since February of 2023 and been struck and increasingly dismayed by the glaring lack of objective process and performance guidelines that should guide such discussions and behavior in general. As Yogi Berra once said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. You don't, and you do. Accordingly, I'd suggest the following, particularly since they're essentially a list of job requirements for what you do. 1, protecting property values. Don't consider proposals which threaten our property values. 2, continuing the decades-long practice of low property taxes, even if you personally think we don't pay high enough property taxes. 3, demonstrating financial responsibility, analytical rigor, and thriftiness. Don't spend millions of taxpayer dollars if not necessary. 4, no secrets, assuring widespread awareness of and opportunity for input on township initiatives. 95%, not 2 to 5%, should be the goal. 5, safety and avoidance of the introduction of sources of crime into the township. Acknowledge what the sources of crime in neighboring communities are and avoid introducing these sources into our community. 6, avoidance of traffic congestion in Plymouth Township. Avoid projects creating traffic congestion. 7, maintaining current township ambiance. Don't make our township a social engineering project for outsiders. Get broad-based residents' input on what they want before pursuing projects to be politically correct. 8, protecting at-risk residents, for example, seniors, veterans, and children, from predatory elements. Honor their vulnerabilities and avoid threats. 9, putting the needs of the township's 28,000 residents before those of a handful of wealthy individuals, companies, and labor unions, all of which are outside of Plymouth Township. Plymouth Township should not be for sale. 10, putting the needs of the township's 28,000 residents before those of a handful of township employees, many of whom are not township residents. Township employees serve the residents, not vice versa. 11, respectful, honest, civil discourse with the township's 28,000 residents across all media, meetings, online, and in print. Our supervisor should aspire to polite discourse, respectful interactions with residents, full disclosure of what's going on, and honest dialogue on actual issues. So what? It's my list, but the reason that I was dismayed by this is that Kurt, you and Jerry don't satisfy any of these requirements. And because you try to tell them what to do, your favorite trustees fail or struggle to comply. The good news is that Chuck Kermey meets every one of these requirements, and after I thought about it a little, early last year, so do John Stewart and Bob Dorshevitz. The point of all this is that the board exists to meet its obligations to the residents based on criteria like these, not to satisfy the whims of 1 or 2 members. You work for us, you need to remember that. Since I went really fast, I've got a copy of the criteria that I'll pass out to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. All righty. I think we're all set now. We're going to move on to new business. Item F1 is the 2023 audit presentation. We have with us tonight
left 2 women on
Ally
the
Barnes
board.
from Yo and
You
Yo,
left the only 2
and
women on
we're
the
trying to
board.
have a, hey guys, got
Okay,
a board meeting going on here, okay?
I'm sorry.
So 2023 audit presentation. Ally Barnes is here from Yo and Yo, along with Finance Director Elizabeth Cutie. Are you out there, Liz? Yep. And so, Ally, I'm going to leave it up to you. I think we have the PowerPoint that you're going to be using, and let's have you go through everything along with you and Liz. If there's anything that needs to be said at the initial point, and then we should open it up for questions, because otherwise we're going to probably go down a lot of rabbit holes that we Don't need to go down right away.
So we are not going to question by page.
What's the,
I think we should.
you want to do that? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we can do that. All
It's
right. So let's,
topic by
so let's
Yeah,
do
I
it by
agree, because
topic.
otherwise you get.
But let's not interrupt anybody, and let's be respectful, right, to our presenter tonight. So Ally, just go through, page by page, and then we'll question page by page. But let's finish the page first before we dive into questions.
Ellie, which one are you on?
That one.
This one?
Yep, so turn to the page, he's gonna show it up on screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. So I will go through what I'm gonna say on a page, and then I will stop and ask for questions, and then I'm happy to address those at that time. Thank you for having me tonight. The audit firm that I'm with, Yo & Yo, is hired to perform the annual audit on the financial statements. The objective of that audit is to issue an opinion. That is the highest level of assurance that we can provide that the financial statements have been presented fairly in accordance with the rules that the township is required to follow when considering materiality. And so the township has received an unmodified or clean audit opinion.
Yay.
Any questions on that page? Okay. Okay, moving on to the next slide. This slide shows us the general fund revenues for the past, this fiscal year and the past 4 fiscal years, so you can kind of see what the trends are looking like. Total revenue came in at about $20.3 million for the fiscal year. That was up about 3.9% from the previous fiscal year. You will see that property taxes makes up the most significant component of general funds revenue, coming in at about $11.2 million for 2023, which was an increase of about 4.6%. After that, this fund brings in revenues from other governmental sources, primarily state sources through state shared revenue, and then sometimes some federal sources as well. So this year that came in at about $3.9 million. And then we have a few other categories that don't make up as significant of dollars, but I do like to present them here just so you can kind of see where you're at. Charges for services have remained relatively flat. Licenses and permits always tend to fluctuate within communities depending on what type of activity, especially building-related activity that you might have. And then there's kind of everything else that comes in that doesn't fall in one of these categories. And that tends to be a relatively small percentage of the funds coming in. 2019, which is listed here, was a little bit of an anomaly. There were some debt proceeds that came in and then some larger capital assets that were sold that generated some revenue. So that's an atypical year for the township. I will pause for questions here.
Which one of those histograms show the tax collection fee of 1%? Which pot is it in?
That would be in the property taxes section. Any other questions? Okay, moving to the next slide, which will be general fund expenditures. So for 2023, this came in at about $19.1 million. It was an increase of 2.7% from 2022. The most significant category of spending would be public safety, which came in at roughly $12.7 million for 2023. You'll see that has been trending upwards. That is not atypical for a government right now either. Most of the communities we work with are seeing this very similar increase in public safety cost. So we're not concerned at all about that. The next largest category would be general government, your treasury function, your clerk, your planning, your zoning, all of those other kind of areas of service fall into general government. You will see that did take a dip from 2020 to 2021. Back in 2020, there was a large contribution made to the OPEB plan.
which is why in those couple years there were higher expenditures and then they dropped down. And they have been increasing, but not too significantly. Questions on this
Is
page?
the capital spent on public safety, police department from drug forfeiture in those public safety expenditures?
No, those are in separate funds.
So those expenditures are in addition to these.
If they
So
were
if we spend $500,000 in the police department on some piece of capital or cars from the drug forfeiture, it is not in that number?
If you spend it out of the forfeiture, it's likely in the forfeiture fund versus choosing to spend general.
So this
fund
doesn't
dollars.
totally depict the expenditure on public safety?
This is general fund expenditures,
General only? So
not township-wide expenditures.
okay, so the millage, the earmarked millage is for police and fire money that is going into this, is that where it went?
Yes.
These expenditures funded by millage earmarked for police and fire is in those numbers, those histograms, the tall ones?
Yes.
All right.
So a couple things to point out to that. The first is in 2023, all of the property taxes we collected, including the administration fee, totaled 11.2 million. But public safety, you can see, is 12.7 million. So public safety being the priority is costs us more than we generate from all of our local taxes, including the administration fee. Two other things, Ally, and I don't want to ask you, you probably know the answer to this question, but I'll point out that, is it accurate that about 70% of our spend out of the general fund is for people-related expenses?
I cannot verify that right now.
Okay, I didn't
could
mean
go
to-
back and figure that out.
Yeah,
but
it is. It's
don't
in the
know.
audit report. I don't mean to set you up. I'm just trying to make a point here. So 70% of our cost is people-related, salaries and retirement and healthcare. 70% of that, so 7 times 7 is 49. 70% of that is public safety, so 7 times 7 is 49. So 49% of all the money we spend is for people in public safety. You start adding on the other categories into that, and what you'll learn is that there's not a lot of discretionary spend in our budget. It's really nominal, and so that's why our budget process is so expedited, because there's not a lot of things that we can't, that we buy extra. So I just wanted to really drive that point home.
So where are we capturing the city of Plymouth's contribution for 911 dispatch share? Is it in that expenditure?
Elizabeth, is that in general fund?
Pardon? In other words, we're spending money for the city of Plymouth. So is it in that number? I see some head shaking, yes?
The city's paying for that.
I know, but that's why I'm trying to understand, is the cost of the city in that number?
If that
In
is
those
paid out of
histograms.
general fund within the public safety categories, then yes.
And we're being reimbursed by the city.
Right, so that's what, so the city's portion is in there, which is approximately what, $1 million? Or not that much for this, I don't know how much it is for dispatch.
Generally a third of the dispatch, and they also have prisoners here, so for dispatch and for jail, roughly a third.
A third, but, okay, we don't know how much that is, all right. I don't remember either.
What's the operating transfers category mean?
That would be funds that general fund transfers out to another fund. And are you wanting to know where that went? Is that why you're asking?
What
page are you on?
I can
I'm still
maybe
on
tell you that.
that page that's up there. There are no page numbers.
Operating transfer is 50,000?
Well, that was in 219.
No, I
Right,
think
but that's the
200
column.
they were like, it
That's
was
the
like
column.
225,000 this year.
225 this year.
So general
Last year.
fund made a $200,000 contribution into the ARPA fund to cover some of those projects that were in the ARPA fund, but general fund was approved to cover a portion of. I'm not sure which fund the 25,000 went into. At the moment, it was into a smaller fund, though.
Thank you.
Is it? Okay. Any other questions while we're on this slide?
We can keep going.
Okay. Moving on to the fund balance in general fund. So I put fund balance here, which is in the line graphs, so that you can see it in comparison to your annual revenues and annual expenditures of the township. So the darkest line there is your total fund balance, which came in at about 9.4 million and represents about 49% of general fund's annual expenditures. The unassigned fund balance portion is about 4.4 million and represents approximately 23% of the annual expenditures. So the township has a policy to maintain a minimum 15% unassigned fund balance, and per these numbers, it has met that internal policy to do so.
What is the definition of unassigned? Give us some examples of what's in the number.
It's free cash.
It's basically, well, can we move to the next slide and I'll break down fund balance for you?
Yeah.
And that might help. So fund balance is essentially if you took that fund's assets, all of them, cash, receivables, prepaids, anything that's an asset, and you liquidated it, and then you paid off all the liabilities that fund currently had, you're left over with a pot of money. That is essentially what fund balance is. So fund balance does not always equate to cash. It can, but it does not always. It's essentially everything that's left over from your assets once you pay off your liabilities. So fund balance for a government is broken down into various categories. So if we start at the top, we'll work our way down. The top little blue sliver is something called non-spendable. So this is where items that cash outlay has already happened are recorded. So if you have a prepaid expenditure, you don't presumably have the cash on hand, you've already paid cash out, and you're going to record that expenditure in the future, so you show a portion of your fund balance as non-spendable. That was relatively small, $500,000, and pretty typical, as you can see.
Like an example of that might be a prepaid maintenance contract on a piece of equipment, right?
Yep, it could be. Yep, anything where you've paid the cash out before you've actually incurred the service period or received goods if it was purchasing a physical object. The next category down is going to be your restricted fund balance. This is fund balance that is restricted by an external party. So it could be a law or regulation, statute of some type that says if you receive this money, you can only spend it on X. And if you don't, and you have some left over, that's okay, but you have to show it as restricted so that people don't think it can be spent on just anything. So you have two categories within restricted. You have your construction code money, so you bring in permit money, and then you have cost associated with the permitting process. And the money that's essentially left over from that goes into restricted. So that was about 2.1 million. Then you have your PEG fees that come in, and similar thing. They can only be spent on certain items, and that comes in at about 637,000.
Just explain a little bit more what PEG fees are, PEG fees.
Yeah, so cable companies essentially pay the township a percentage, and then the township can only use those dollars on certain expenditures like broadcasting. So broadcasting public type events, maybe some equipment that you need to facilitate those type of broadcastings, those type of things.
What do you do when you build up a balance and you don't have any way to spend it on those items? What happens? Say after 10 or 15 years?
Have to keep restricting it until there's a change.
At the time.
It's state law at this point, but, you know, what other communities do is they use that money they build TV studios and they hire staff and they run commercials basically 24/7 and they interview each other. And if you look at Livonia, Canton, Dearborn, I mean, it's quite an extensive TV studio operation, and PEG fees are what keeps it alive.
They interview each other?
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks like we should be
Got anyone
lowering,
want to interview me
they
on
should
the?
lower the fee over collection.
State law. It's in the Metro Act. State
Right.
law.
Maybe it needs to be adjusted.
Well, you run for
Run
state
for
rep.
legislator.
Okay, so
Okay,
next.
All right.
Next
So now we're in the
category.
beige section?
Yes. So that's committed fund balance, which can only be done at the board level. So the board approved committing 1.8 million of general funds fund balance, and that was for a list of items. So some building improvements, recreation and election services, public safety vehicles were some of the items that those dollars had been committed for. The only way to uncommit those dollars is to either spend them towards those specific purposes, or the board passes a resolution and says, we no longer wish to commit these dollars. The last category then, so we start with total fund balance, we back off all these other categories that you have to show, and what you're left with is an unassigned fund balance. And that's what came in at the 4.4 million. Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
So basically, the darkest blue and the beige color is what's really under our control. We can control the destiny of that, whereas the rest of it is restricted or non-spendable. Okay, any other questions on this slide? Okay.
Okay, we're gonna switch gears out of general fund and touch on some water and sewer activity here. So I have kind of the main metrics that we do the 10,000 foot view kind of look at within a utility fund here. So we have the annual operating revenues and expenses. So for 2023, your revenues came in about 13.9 versus operating expenses of 12.4. We're looking there to see, are your operating revenues outpacing expenses? And in this case, they are by about 1.4 million. So that's positive. And then we take a look at what does your unrestricted net position and your working capital look like. So unrestricted net position here for you is about 23.8 million. I will point out, if you went to your audited statements, it would be significantly higher. I've put on here that we do back out the investment in Watua because there's not a lot you can do and influence in that number. So it's better to take it out when considering just the township activity in there. So still a very sizable unrestricted net position in that fund. The other piece to look at is working capital. So if you take all of your current assets and deduct all of your current liabilities, we essentially have working capital. And so at the end of 2023, that came in at about 21.1 million. So a good balance in both of those has been accumulating over time. Your utility system does not have a lot of long-term debt like many other utility systems have, and you have cash on hand to be able to handle some major repairs and some improvements as well. So from our standpoint, that fund is looking very healthy. Obviously, I don't have your capital improvement plan to compare that all against and know what you know, the next 5 to 10 years might look like. But there are decent reserves sitting there in that fund.
So the working capital number of 21 point something, is it that far right dot just below the black one?
Yes.
So the look back from Yucca, that is going to hit in '24, right? That's not in '23? The look back, the extra money we had to pay?
No,
Was that in,
Yeah,
was that in this period?
it's been booked.
Okay, so.
We've paid it.
Yeah, so what happened was that Ypsilanti, Yucca, the sewage treatment plant had made a mistake in a formula earlier in time, and all the communities got hit with a surcharge. So we looked better. We still ended the year in net revenue despite that additional surcharge we had. But the other thing to point out is that I think last year we raised water rates, 1%, and the year before, not at all.
Right.
So we've raised water rates only 1% in 2 years, and we're still coming out, net positive in terms of our revenue over expenses. So that's a good thing.
And Bob, what's the average rate increase every year from Great Lakes Water Authority?
It's been 5 to 7, 7.9 last year. So we're doing really, really well in the water and sewer fund.
Okay.
So our investment in the sewage treatment plant, Yucca as it's called, is in these numbers as part of Watua? Is Yucca
No,
in the
we had-
Watua numbers?
So we're mixing a couple elements
Yeah, it
here.
was
So
operating.
we pay money into Watua every year for its ongoing maintenance and capital improvement program. That number has gone down dramatically over the last several years because we broke away from the Wayne County sewer system. Yucca is the facility that treats the sewage that we send to Yucca through the Watua system. And this past year, over the last couple years, there was a major accounting error at Yucca, not by us, not by Watua, that resulted in a surcharge to Plymouth, Canton, and Northfield townships. Canton Township, of course, bearing the sizable brunt of that surcharge because they're a major customer. This was due to a variety of factors that frankly should have been caught by technical auditors of Yucca over many years. I mean, I guess the good news is over that multi-year period, we were underpaying. We were not paying as much as we should have. Now, after they did their review, we have to now make up that difference. So now we're paying, this last year, we paid extra to Yucca to make everything even out.
How much was the error that Plymouth Township's share of the error?
$451,000.
And that was for 1 year, or was it for?
Multiple years of.
You mean like a decade, or was it
About
3 or
4 years, about 4 years. And so Canton's was probably, I would say, at least twice that amount. They were pushing $1 million.
Did we have to pay interest on that?
No, and it was and actually that number was a negotiated down number between Watua and Yucca. And no, it was between Watua and Yucca because they're all in the same business, and so they negotiated down a final settlement number for all the communities.
So our sewage treatment costs are higher because of the correction of the error also going forward?
No, because
No?
this was a course correction, and so we are still paying, proportionately what we normally would have done in a normal year.
So our rate didn't change? It's
We don't-
somehow our share of the fixed costs?
We don't know about water rates yet. We
No,
haven't
I'm
set
talking
water
about the
rates.
sewage treatment rate, Yucca.
Well, it's been, the rate is staying the same because it's based on volume. It's based on the flow metering, metering the flows that go into the system.
No, but the rate, dollars per cubic feet or million cubic feet or whatever.
That would be the same number for all communities based on flow.
What I'm trying to get at is,
target.
did the error fix raise the rate?
Was it an adjustment in the rate?
No, it was a one-time payment by all 3 communities.
So the calculation going forward has been correct?
Yes.
It is correct. Okay, any other questions on the
So
water?
getting back to the assets, or YCUA, Yucca, is it in this chart water and sewer fund, you said that Wautua, net investment of Wautua, but does that include YCU, Yucca?
You don't have a,
We spent money, we bonded to expand their plant. So there's an asset there.
No, it's their asset.
Well, no, there's an asset, we bonded to expand that plant. Our portion was X, and we took it, the bond was paid off last August.
That was Wautua, not Yucca.
That's a
But
Wautua.
the money went to, why, yes, it was. It went to, we expanded that plant in about 2005.
Yeah, but it's their plant.
Right, but we bonded to raise the money, or maybe Wautua did, but we had to raise money to do that. So I'm trying to understand where the.
But Yucca is not our asset. Our asset are our assets, our pipes and water.
We expanded the pipe system in Canton. We built an equalization basin in Canton, which is right at Michigan Avenue and 275.
And we
That's all
expanded the
Wautua.
sewage treatment plant.
No. The
Yes, we
sewage
did. I
treatment
negotiated it in
plant-
1999. We
Okay.
expanded it.
But it's theirs, not ours.
Right, I know, but I'm trying to, but there was an investment
But
in it.
it's not our asset.
No, but okay.
However,
Our
that-
investment went somewhere.
You don't have an investment in this fund currently recorded as an asset in Yucca, just Wautua.
Just
okay.
Wautua.
Just Wautua.
So then Wautua must have some investment in Yucca.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't
All right.
audit them, so I couldn't tell you that.
I was just trying to understand the flow of the money that we paid. We funded it, that's why our water bills, that surcharge went off last August,
Because that was a bond to improve the Wautua system.
January.
So
and Yucca was part of it.
I'm
positive.
Okay.
Yucca was, we expanded
May
the
have been
plant.
in
but anyway.
1999, but it was not part of the Wautua bond that fell off recently. Okay, let's move on to pension liability. Hallie?
Yes. Pension liability. So the next couple slides, we'll just touch on some of the longer-term liabilities for the township. Pension being one of the more significant liabilities. So here you can see essentially the assets of the pension system in blue and the actual total pension liability there in beige for the last few years. And then the net pension liability. So if we took the total liability and we reduced it by the assets we have on hand to currently pay for it, that gives us net pension liability. So you can see that you were trending along really well, staying relatively flat, decreasing just slightly. And then between 2022 and 2023, that liability spiked up again. The reason for that net pension liability spiking up like that is because the measurement date for this particular liability is actually a year behind. So the assets, which are in the blue section there, include market activity at December of 2022. So those of you that follow the market, remember that month in particular was really bad. And so asset valuations had declined pretty substantially, and that means that flowed through to your 2023 audited statements. So we would expect the 2023 valuation is going to see those assets go back up and that liability, net pension liability, come back down. So this is mainly due to timing of the market in December of 2022. You will notice that the total pension liability does increase gradually every year, and that's because there's always a service cost that's calculated. So every year that you have the plan open and you have active participants in the plan, you will keep incurring service cost that keeps accruing to that liability. So
This is defined benefit.
yes, defined benefit.
So we had anticipated that by the end of 2027, we would be done funding this. Is that still the case, you think?
Not tell you
Something
that.
in the notes here that talks about it?
The
No?
notes will not tell you that because that's speculative information.
This is a closed defined benefit pension. It's
The
closed.
model assumes I think a 7.5% return, And if you don't get the 7.5% return, the model, you have a greater gap. And if you get a better return than that, you have a smaller gap year by year, right? Not rocket science.
Yeah, so 7.5% in the last couple of years has been pretty easy.
Yeah, as she said, this is lags a year, this reporting, because this is showing, the end of '22. And that's the way MERS is reported. So if you looked at it today, it would be a very much different number because of the market returns from '23.
Ally, the percentage that, can you go over this again in terms of percentages? Like where were we funded? What percentage funding were we at the end of '23?
So you were 62.87% funded.
Yeah, and that went down, and that was down because of market conditions. So right now, again, speculative, but I mean, I think, would 68% be
I think
modest?
I'm waiting. I actually have the report due at the end of the month, and I'm waiting for the actuary report, one more actuary report, which should be in the next week or so, right, Les? Yeah. So once I have that number, I'll send it out to the board.
Yeah, just for reference, so 2022's audited statements showed 75.63% funded.
Well, okay.
So it was down substantially because of this.
So we're
market issue.
probably in the 70% range right now, which is
You could
pretty, very healthy, actually. That's really good.
Yeah, it's good.
And I would point out, too, that our unions have not asked for any changes in the defined pension plan since 2016. So they recognize that it's something that obviously we still have to pay for in order to keep it afloat. Okay, what's next?
Okay, next slide is the OPEB liability. So this is related to healthcare benefits provided upon retirement. So here you can see there's some pretty significant changes. You'll notice the beige was a lot higher in 19 and 20 and has been reduced. So between 2020 and 2021, there were several assumptions within the actuarial calculation that were changed. And the result of those changes is that the total OPEB liability expected decreased pretty significantly. So that's why you see the beige dropping down. And then also that causes the net OPEB liability to decrease as well. So from 2021 to 2023, that net OPEB liability has remained relatively consistent there. For OPEB, this is actually measured at the end of 2023. So that's why you don't see a significant decrease in the 2023 assets here, because it's actually in time with.
Another thing to point out about this is that OPEB was not funded at all prior to 2016 or 17. So it was
18.
Was it 18 when we started funding it?
Yeah, that was part of the public safety millage.
Yeah.
So we started paying for it in 19.
Because communities weren't required to fund the promised post-retirement health care, and communities all over the state didn't fund it. So we made a conscious effort to start funding it, and we've been adding additional money to it every year in order to try to close that chasm, so that once it comes time to pay out all of these post-employment benefits, it doesn't have to be paid off out of current operating funds in a future year. We'll have the money set aside. So there are some communities that have had it be bailed out because they've got absolutely nothing set aside. They made huge promises of pensions back when everybody was young in the 70s and 80s, and now they're paying it out and they don't have the money. And that's what we're trying to avoid here.
And this is primarily healthcare expenses, not pension. And this is also.
Did I say pension?
You did.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
sorry.
it's okay. But this is primarily healthcare for retirees, and it is now it is state law. It's mandated by the state, and this was done. This was approved in the 2013-2014 timeframe. by the legislature as a result of several of the bankruptcies that we saw in school districts and communities like Detroit, like Flint, like Benton Harbor, several of the other communities that went bankrupt in the early 2000s. One of the reasons was they could not provide these retirement benefits to their employees, which was required under their labor contracts. So they were getting sued, and they were forced. They were in many cases either had to do a clawback or a haircut, as they call it, or in some cases a structured bankruptcy in the case of Flint or City of Detroit or the Detroit School District.
So I have a question about what are the assumptions and who directed them to be changed between 2020 and 2021?
That is usually something your township works with the actuary on to develop those assumptions. So I cannot say specifically who, but.
So it wasn't a law change, it was an assumption that was made by the actuary?
Why the number went down.
They, I'm sure, would have guided the process of moving to new assumptions based on not only the knowledge they have of your specific township, but also all of the plans that they do the calculations for. But usually that is done in conjunction with someone at the township so that you have input on that piece.
So is this money stored at MERS?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in its own account.
And it generates interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another factor is our healthcare costs have been very stable. We have not seen spikes up or down, and that has allowed us to budget properly, and I think it's kept these numbers stable. Plus, we put in, how much money do we put in every year? $250 into OPEB. It was originally $1 million, then we've throttled that back, but that's a number that we can always adjust that to based on market conditions and actuarial assumptions of when people are going to retire and what their estimated benefits are going to be. Okay, then, let's move on.
Okay, to wrap things up, I want to touch on internal controls and compliance, and then talk about the governance letter that's within your statements as well. So this year, we did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Once we factored in looking at all the numbers, looking at internal controls, and kind of running through the compliance items that we have to look at. What we did have is a management comment, and this relates to the special assessment fund. So this is an enterprise type fund for the township, and it has been in a deficit for a few years. This was a management comment last year, I believe, and the deficit has increased since then. So the current year, there was roughly a $376,000 loss recorded within this fund, which brought the total deficit net position to $566,000. So because of the type of fund it is and the rules around when a deficit elimination plan is required, the township is not required to file one for this particular deficit. But again, we really recommend diving into this fund to figure out what's going on. Some of it may be a timing issue of when some assessments will be levied and then recorded as revenue. And some of it could be that projects are costing more than the amount that's being levied, and it's going to have to be determined who makes up that difference in those projects.
I think it's more the former than the latter. And so what happens with this is that we've got to figure out what we're going to do with this fund, because let's say there's an SAD for street repairs, and we spend $10 million. It hits that fund, and as people are being assessed over the 10-year period or 5-year period and adding it to their taxes with the interest, that goes back in and pays the fund. So it's recorded as a deficit, but it's not really a deficit because it's got all those receivables out there of people that owe on the special assessments, and eventually we'll get that money, whether they pay it with their taxes or, we'll get that money back.
Is this predominantly because of the lateness of the contractor on the sidewalk repair in 2023?
I wouldn't say
We haven't
predominantly,
invoiced
but
yet, correct?
that's a factor, but it's not the only factor. It's SADs in general, because we fronted the money out there, and I believe this was, somehow that SAD fund got funded in the first place long before my time. But now if we do an SAD this year, let's say a neighborhood, repairs their streets, we're gonna be fronting the money for that, and that will make the deficit on this particular fund look even greater, because there's cash in the SAD account, but the fund itself is showing a deficit because there's more liability on the fund than there is cash revenue equivalents.
And the people owe that money to us.
They owe the
It's
money.
receivable. It's a receivable.
The interest rate was adjusted down of 4% plus something, plus some market rate, right?
What we did when we changed that, we said prime plus 2.
That's it, okay.
So if we do an SAD in the next year, if we were to do one in the next year, it would be a prime plus 2 to finance that. And that stays fixed over the life of the period of time of which they're financing. It doesn't vary from year to year.
Currently, there's really, in my opinion, a low incentive to pay it off at prime plus 2, but we can worry about that later.
Yeah, that's an individual choice. But the sidewalk fund is a different story, because we've traditionally financed those sidewalks and allow people to pay them off over 5 years without interest. And we've completed 3 of the 5 zones, so we wouldn't be able to really change that longstanding policy until every zone has been
You
completed.
mean the interest-free policy?
Yeah, the interest-free.
For sidewalk repair?
Yeah, because otherwise somebody in zone 5 could be hit with interest when somebody 4 years ago in zone 1 was not. That's not fair.
So when will you invoice 2023 and expect the sign-off from engineering?
The contractor is still working through their punch list, and I'm still waiting for the engineering firm to provide me with.
We've got to hurry them up. We're carrying that receivable.
You're preaching to the choir, brother.
So we've got to hurry them up. I'm glad we didn't do repairs this year, because the service is so poor, the timing is so bad, and the cost is so high.
Well, that will give an opportunity for that to shrink, because there'll be no more expenditures for this particular sidewalk thing, and people will be paying over the next year, so it will shrink.
Okay, want to move on?
Last item I wanted to mention
Sure.
on this slide, which isn't on here, but within your packets is a stapled letter. I think I put it between your presentation and the bound one. But that is the ARPA compliance examination report. It's much smaller than a single audit and is a lot less work than a single audit, and also costs you a lot less than a single audit. But that is where we did a more in-depth look of the ARPA dollars that were spent to meet your federal auditing requirement.
So we were under the 10 million and we didn't have to go through the single audit?
Correct.
Yay.
Yeah. So
We got
yes.
$2.83 million, so.
Yep, so no single audit compliance examination reports there, no findings included in that. So that should kind of.
And the ARPA money has all been spent for the most part.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, last slide then. So within your financial statements, tucked in the back is the governance letter. I'm just going to touch on a few of the items here on the slide that we're required to make sure that you're aware of. So there were 2 new GASBs adopted this year, 94 and 96. They did not significantly impact your statements. There was a footnote disclosure added for one, and the other, there was nothing material to record. So you kind of got out of those couple of statements, which is nice. There are significant estimates that go into your financial statements, just so that you're aware. Capital assets are considered a significant estimate because of the depreciation expense. And the useful lives that are assigned to assets that are capital assets. That most significantly impacts your water and sewer fund because depreciation expense is considered an operating expense, and therefore you need to factor that in when setting rates. The other two significant estimates are that net pension and net OPEB liability because of all the actuarial assumptions that go into those particular dollar amounts. We are required to communicate to you the significant risks that we identified in planning for the audit. So we consider two areas, management override. So how could someone within management circumvent controls to do something improper? And also, how could revenue be improperly recognized? So we have specific procedures that we come up with each year to look at each of those particular areas. No issues in the testing this year. Then there are some uncorrected misstatements that you will find in that letter. Some people think, oh, uncorrected misstatement, this is a big deal, but it's really not. So because of materiality, governments, anyone being audited really, has the option to pass on recording certain things. Sometimes things require a lot of administrative headache to do the recording, and they don't make a significant impact on the financial statements. But if they're over certain thresholds, we do need to point it out to you that, hey, there's this item out here. We're not going to record it, but it is here so that you know. So the uncorrected misstatement for your township relates to leases. So GASB 87 says there's a way that you record leases on your annual financial statements to be in compliance with GASB. You are still making your lease payments, and those show up in your expenditures, just like you have always done. So the expenditure is there, the cash going out is there, all of that is fine. It's just the year-end accounting and what goes in your footnotes.
Can you give us an example of a lease payment?
Yeah, so you have a lot of like computer equipment that you lease.
Yeah.
So that would be one. I think your
Golf carts,
are
the golf
leased.
carts, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't remember if you guys have copiers, but a lot of people lease
We
copiers.
have, yeah, copiers, yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay.
those type of items. At the end of the day, for your financial statements, to do all the work for that, it's just not significant for you.
We got this really cool machine that opens the envelopes. I love that machine. It's fun.
Oh, there you go. I need one of those. That'd be great. No more people.
Okay.
Lastly, on here then, there are just a few upcoming GASB statements. They're going to impact your compensated absences, perhaps some risk disclosures, and then the latest one that came out has some financial statement reporting model changes. So more to come on all of those. The only one effective next year is related to compensated absences. But that shouldn't have too significant on an impact for what you do day to day. It's mostly year-end reporting.
What does that mean? We're going to have to record compensated absences as a liability? Is that what that means?
So you already do that. It's just changing the rules around how that's done. So potentially your liability could get bigger. That seems to be what's happening a lot of places. It'll either stay the same or likely get bigger.
And that would be accrued sick time that is paid out when the person retires as one
Right.
big example.
Vacation time.
Yeah, vacation and sick time that's not used, but
Yep.
accrued.
Okay.
Process question when you're ready.
Yeah, is this your last slide?
It is.
Okay. Mr.
Ready? This is a process question internally. If we budget a capital item or a building repair or whatever, and what is your opinion about bringing it back to the board for actually approving? Because occasionally you'll get people who'll say, oh, it's in the budget, so I get to spend it, without board approval, formal approval, because it was approved in the budget.
Well, you'd have to go back to your purchasing policy, which I don't know off the top of my head, but if your purchasing policy said it had to go back to the board, then that's what you do.
Liz, do you know?
I think it's any purchase greater than $50,000.
Greater than 50 or
If it's over
15?
50, it comes to the board, right? Yeah.
Pardon?
It's 50.
If it's over 50, it comes to the board.
Yeah.
Under 50, it does not.
It's always been my understanding of the policy.
As long as it's in the budget, and, and then it's handled through the normal procurement process. And that process is adopted by board resolution every so often. I think that we did it about 4 or 5 years ago, so.
So the board gets 2 looks at it, and let's say, for example, there's a piece of equipment in the fire department, I'll pick on the chief. So the first look the board would have at it would be during the budget cycle this year, this summer, up through the fall, when the budget for 2025 is set. And then it's over 50,000, so the board would have a second look at it when it came back for the actual acquisition of that product next spring, after we went out for bids and found a supplier and found the right thing and said, okay, it's budgeted, now board, we're gonna actually spend it, so here's the proposal. And that's how that works. So the board always has 2 looks at it. The exception to that is if it's unbudgeted, might be an emergency expense, and it's the same process, it's just combined into one step for board review.
But that's all by board policy.
That's policy.
Yeah, we create that.
Yeah,
Right.
it's purchasing policy.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions for Ally? John?
One comment. Thank you for a straightforward, plain-spoken presentation. I'm surprised you got through, and looking at our fund balance of 8 going on 9 million, that's exemplary. I'm surprised you got through a presentation without mentioning the need and importance of an audit. And all we have seen in the newspapers this past week, and I've read on private accounts, is the audit of the Detroit Conservancy, the waterfront.
The river.
The river.
Walk.
It was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Now, my wife has to endure an audit for $650,000 a year with the Michigan Philharmonic. And the governor's office has proposed a significant cut in the Auditor General's budget for this year for the state of Michigan with an $81 billion state budget. Where's the check and balance? I mean, so I appreciate you. Now, forgive me, I was at a family gathering with 3 CPAs in my family this past weekend who are employed by Plant Moran. So I appreciate you, and this is the right way to do things.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and then I would just again like to thank Ally and her team from Yo and Yo. This is now your third year doing our audit, or 4th year? Third? Well, it's been so much fun. We've enjoyed it. And then again, I want to thank I want to definitely thank our finance director, Elizabeth Cutie. This was your first audit here at Plymouth Township, and then of course Carol Roshan, the deputy, who this is probably now your 4th or 5th audit, and that's basically the finance team right there. We are, again, a very lean operation, and we're pretty close-knit, and we rely on each other for advice and counsel on putting audits together and budgets and everything. And now we get to work on the budget process, because the budget starts, that process will start with internal meetings in July and then continue through November. And then, of course, we have public hearings. One that is mandatory, but we go the extra mile and do the extra hearings for police, fire, general government, water, and other miscellaneous things. I think last year we did a special meeting just for the clerk's office because we had all the election stuff to finance. So again, thank you very much to the team. Thank you for a clean review, and we look forward to continuing on this progress that we've made over the last 8 years, which is truly remarkable. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, yes. I think it needs to be said that when we came into the office, the audits were not done on time. Matter of fact, the state was withholding revenue sharing funds because the audits were not being done. Additionally, the bank recs were not done for over a year. And that's what mismanagement looks like. This is what good management looks like. And everyone took part of that, making it good. The treasurers getting all the bank recs done, the accounting doing their job, the supervisor doing his job. Everybody working together as a team has caused us to have numerous clean audits done on time, and it doesn't threaten us losing revenue from the state. But that was the way it was before. This is a product of good management, a good team that works together. All of the employees, the people who work for the citizens, are doing a very good job. And they take their jobs and their work seriously. And they take their jobs so seriously, they're always trying to improve themselves. They're always doing continuing education. They're not just worker bees that are slaves to an entity or to a group of people. These are real human beings who are doing really good work. And I gotta say that I'm a little disappointed that some people think that these people are not deserving of the money they get, the benefits they get, and the accolades that they deserve. And I wanna say, I remember when I was a police officer, and people called me names, you're a pig. And I reached out to them and I say, you know what? You can call me a name if you want to, but I'm a human being. I have a mother that loves me, I have a father that loves me, brothers and sisters, and so do all of these other people out here. Everybody here steps up every day, does their job, and they should not be diminished in any way. And I resent anybody that does that. But again, I want to thank Ms.
May I offer a motion?
I'm not done talking, okay? You can bloviate all you want. And so I want to thank Carol and Ms. Cutie, and also Mary Ann, who's our accounts payable person. So that's the team, a part-time person and 2 full-time people that report to the clerk, and we do a great job. The treasurer works hand in hand with them, does a great job, so does the supervisor. So lots of accolades need to be put forward here, and thank you also, Ally, for the work that your team does.
Yeah, the interesting thing to add to that is audits cost less than they used to because they take less hours, because the team all year long prepares for the audit, rather than wait to the last minute and try to figure out where stuff is throughout the whole year. You're preparing documents and having them placed in the right place.
We don't have to play
have to look
whack-a-mole
for 'em.
or find the hat or anything like that.
How
like
many
we
days
did.
were you on site this time? 3 or so?
2 days.
8 years ago, I think that was measured in a couple months. Yeah, months.
Yeah, it was weeks or months.
It cost us tens of thousands of dollars.
To straighten it out. Oh, well. So, what do we have to do now? Is this a motion to receive and
Yes,
file?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Is it a motion to receive and file?
Right here, the
I'm
motion.
kind of asking Ally, really? You want to, I think we should do that. Oh, there is a motion.
There's a motion.
I can read
Knock
the motion.
yourself out, somebody.
I'm voting no.
I move that the Plymouth Township Board of Trustees hereby adopt resolution number 2024-06-11-33, approving the audit of fiscal year 2023's financial statements, reports, and letters of required communication and follow-up recommendations to be filed with the state of Michigan by Yo and Yo, and to acknowledge the receipt and file of the previously stated.
Second.
Motion's made by trustee Stewart, seconded by trustee Kermy. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Stewart.
Yes.
Trustee Monahan.
Yes.
Trustee Buckley.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Treasurer Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All righty. Again, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the Plymouth Township Historic District Commission Annual Report. Wendy, before you get started, come on up to the podium. But before you get started, if you could introduce your fellow commission members. I think we have several here tonight.
Yes. Do I need to sign in?
No?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh.
We know who you are.
Well, thank you so much for having us tonight, and I say us because we do have the majority of our Historic District Commission here. I think Sybil Hunter's our only one who's...
If you could just introduce them and have them stand up.
Yeah, so we have Stephen Bassett. You want to stand up?
Hey.
Ben Ike.
Oh, watch out.
Ben Ike. Dennis Sobolski,
We've got Colleen Azimi, and Carol is in the back, Carol Solchek.
Yep.
And Sybil Hunter is the only one who's missing tonight. But these are all volunteers from our community, and they give of their time and their knowledge, their expertise, their connections within the community. And I really appreciate all the work that you guys do, so thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours.
So we just wanted to come tonight because Carol and Colleen were being reappointed and give you guys an update on everything that we've been doing since 2023 into June of 2024. So I would like to bring this picture to your attention. We discovered that the Root family photo album actually exists in the Bentley, which was so exciting for us that we could put faces with the names. But this house still exists on Ann Arbor Road and looks exactly like this. And we took the gingerbreading and made our logo. If you look at the gingerbreading above the door and our logo, this is where our logo comes from. And so it was really exciting to find this historic photo from 1915. And we assume these are some of the Root family members on the porch there. Next slide, please. So tonight I handed out a copy of our updated Historic Sites of Plymouth Township. This is a brochure that we produced a couple of years back, and we were running out of copies, so we thought if we're going to reprint them, let's give a little bit of updated information, things that we've learned. Also, there's a new photo of Phoenix Mill because the last time we printed this, it was in the middle of being restored. So we have a new beautiful photo of the way it looks now. Next slide, please. Shearer Cemetery. So Shearer Cemetery is a project that is near and dear to my heart, and we've been working to clean up this historic cemetery. For those of you that don't know, this is the oldest cemetery that we have in the township, really in the township and the city. And the first person who was interred here was 1826. So we continue to clean up. The poison ivy continues to be a problem, but we have a couple of cleanups a year, and something strange happened last October when we went to clean up the cemetery. We discovered a new headstone, and we're not quite sure where it came from, but it was propped up against the tree, just like that, where it had never been before. And we know it's new because we did an inventory of all of our headstones. We took pictures, we transcribed what they say, we compared it with a database that Darren Sylvester had put together. And so we're not quite sure where this tombstone came from, but it has been an issue throughout the years that people unfortunately take headstones, and then what we find is when a family member passes away, the family's cleaning out the garage, the basement, the yard, and they find a headstone, and they don't know what to do with it. So we think that that's probably the case of what happened here, and somebody with probably the best of intentions took it to Shearer Cemetery, but there's no name on it. The name has been broken away, and so we don't know who this person was. We don't know that they actually were buried at Shearer. We're not even sure that they're from Plymouth, because if you will recall, a couple of years back, we had another headstone that appeared out in Lake Point, and it turned out it belonged in a cemetery out by Ann Arbor.
Yeah, in Northfield Township. So that's a case where a home in Lake Point, they were doing some landscaping work, and the landscaping team was out there, and they were digging, and they were planting bushes and trees, and they hit what they thought was a rock, and it turned out to be a well-preserved, frankly, very well-preserved headstone. So, of course, the homeowners kind of freaked out a little bit, wondering if this was a Poltergeist 3 or something, right. But fortunately, it was linked back. We did actually the police. This was a great exercise for the police because they used a lot of their research resources to trace it back to a cemetery in Northfield Township, where apparently there was a dispute between the farmer and the cemetery, and the farmer, I guess, decided to remove headstones, so not cool. And they ended up scattered around the community, so.
And I actually did speak with St. Patrick's recently
Yeah.
because I wanted to follow up and see if the headstone had been repaired and put back, and unfortunately it has not yet. But this happens over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
you would be shocked how frequently this happens.
Yeah.
And we want to be sure, for historical accuracy, that we have headstones there that represent people who either were once buried there and moved to Riverside or are still there. So placing a headstone there for somebody who is not buried there creates a false sense of history. And so what we would like to do, working with the township, of course, and legal, is come up with some type of policy where people are guided to return headstones. And of course, we do want them returned. We do want to know about it. We think this one might have been placed there because they didn't know what to do with it, but also because people are concerned that there might be some type of legal action taken against them. And we really don't want that, because we do want the headstones returned.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing project. I don't know if we'll ever know who this person was, but we're thinking once we get the cemetery cleaned up, maybe have a portion of the cemetery where we can display headstones that were returned, but we don't know where they belong. So that's kind of our update on Shearer.
And then just to state that the Shearer Cemetery, pursuant to state law, is basically an abandoned separate cemetery, which means that it reverts back to the city or township in which it's located. So it's ours, and you guys have done a great job of keeping it clean and updated. I know one thing we are still looking to do is get an egress easement so that we can bring, so the township can bring in heavier items to do cleanups, but that would not be open to the public, and that would be a private agreement that we would have with some of the adjacent homeowners.
I live not next door, but one lot over.
Oh.
And some of the neighbors have told me there are headstones around that people took over the years. So I like your idea, if it can be, look, bring them back, no questions asked, just make it a pretty public thing, so
Yeah.
people know no one's gonna get in trouble.
Kind of like an amnesty program, where
Yeah.
no
And
questions
so
asked.
if you find something at home that you contact the township,
asked is that.
yeah,
No
and we can
questions
try to
asked.
figure out where they belong. A really crazy story while I was researching this online, there was a case out on the west side of the state where this grandmother was famous for making fudge. Everybody in the family looked forward to receiving her fudge that she would hand roll out on her piece of marble in the kitchen. And when she passed away and they were cleaning out the house, they flipped it over and it's a headstone.
Oh, my gosh.
And they were able to find where this headstone belonged and return it to the cemetery. They were not quite sure where this man was actually buried, but they returned the headstone and put it with his family,
Wow.
which I think is what they're going to do with the headstone in Northfield when they get it repaired, so.
One of my neighbors said they know a headstone that's used just as like a step, like a mini step at a house.
Well, and I explain that as the early settlers were the original recyclers, right? So we know that a lot of people from Shearer were moved to Riverside, or if the family moved to another part of the state, it was the custom to dig your dead relatives up and take them with you. So we know that things were moved, and the headstone was the property of the family. So if they wished to, they could take it. And a lot of the times they would flip them over and make garden pavers, or they would put them in the foundation of the house. Like, they reused this beautiful marble.
Well, no, I mean, this was more like recent, because in the 60s or 70s, there were still a lot of stones there from 90%.
Okay, well, you guys can continue that discussion.
Take it offline.
Why don't we keep going here?
So, no, back to the slide. No, that one. So this house on North Territorial, I believe I spoke about it last year and gave you guys an update. We are researching it. We're trying to ultimately create a historic marker for this home on North Territorial. So a really exciting thing that has come to light is I was going through all of the property records, who it was sold to, what dates they were sold. The farm was originally much larger, of course. It's been cut down. Subdivisions were built on the farm property. But this one from 1890 really jumped out at me. The names Henry Baker, Charlie Bennett, Michael Connor. I got really excited about it because those are all Daisy names. So when you look at it, Henry Baker, and if you go to the next slide, it'll show the house that I'm sure everybody is going to be familiar with if you don't know the name Henry Baker. He actually was from this area in Plymouth Township, which I did not know. It was called Cooper's Corners at the time, but it's basically kind of the North Territorial back area. So Henry Baker was from there, local guy, made good, made a fortune, and started the Daisy Manufacturing Company along with Michael Connor. Charlie Bennett came in a little bit later, but this was his house that he built in 1875. So he already had this house when he bought this farm in 1890. So more research needs to be done, but and if you look at this picture, he is, I don't know how to describe it, but there's a row of people sitting in the middle. Yeah. So go up to the row of people sitting and go over to the right. He's the farthest. Yeah, that's him. That's Henry Baker. So I think what happened is his brother-in-law passed away and he gained custody of all the children. So Edgar Bennett was 19 at the time. And it says in the abstract that he has custody of Edgar. So I'm thinking maybe the connection is that he was buying this farm for Edgar, like starting out in life, possibly. But more research needs to be done. But I thought it was really exciting that we found a Daisy connection in the township. I think most people, because the Daisy factory was in the city, they really associate Daisy as being in the city. But we have this wonderful connection too.
This is that house that's to the left of the Plymouth Scholars, the charter school?
No, that's across from Dairy
This is
King.
across from it's right next to the library.
No, the other one.
This one.
Oh, you mean this one? Yes, this is out on North Territorial out by Beck. It's the art attic where she does like yoga lessons and art lessons. It's a really cute little house.
Which side of the road is it on?
It's on the north side.
Next to Plymouth Scholars.
Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Right here.
All right.
So next we come to our podcast. We have started a podcast thanks to Ben Ike, and he has been hard at work with some of our other commissioners producing a podcast, which is on the township's website. So if you look over there on the right-hand corner, you just have to go to the homepage and scroll down, and you can find that link, which will take you to the 3 podcasts that we already have produced, which there's one about St. John's, there's one about Shearer, which Ben interviewed Darren Sylvester, and there's an interview with Jack Dempsey on there. He was on the HDC. He really started the HDC with writing the ordinance. He was on the Board of Trustees for a number of years, and so Ben has interviewed him. But the name of it is There's History in Plymouth Township. That's the name of our podcast. And we have several more in the works. There's one about the library, which just celebrated its 100th birthday. There's one about Rotary, which is currently celebrating its 100th anniversary. So we've got a couple of them in the pipeline and looking forward to listening to those. Next slide. Our historic marker for Triangle Park. I'm not sure if we're calling it Triangle Park still, or is it Golfview?
I call it Golfview Park,
Okay.
but it goes by several names.
So this is out in the, it's Ann Arbor Trail, Beck, and Prospect. Or not Prospect, is that?
Powell?
Powell, I'm sorry, Powell. So it makes a little triangle there, and it's a new park. This was actually Jack Dempsey's brainchild back when he was on the HDC, that he thought it would be a nice addition to the park if we did some type of marker that tells people about the agricultural history out on the west side of the township. And he was inspired, oddly enough, by this marker that is at the former Daisy manufacturing site in the city on Union there. And he brought it to the township and he said, "This is what I would like to produce." And I said, "I can do that for you because I made that marker." So we're making something that looks exactly like that. It's two-sided, and we plan on putting it right here in a triangle at Gulfview Park so that people can view both sides. It's my understanding there's going to be a butterfly garden there with some native plants around it. And it is being produced right now. I've asked for an install date, but I have not gotten one back. I was hoping I would have it by tonight, but we'd like to do a dedication ceremony and of course invite everybody to come and celebrate the installation of our new marker that highlights all of our wonderful history.
And the sign is being paid for through the Wayne County Parks Grant that we receive every year, and that's going to be part of the overall improvements to that area.
And so this brings us to the American World War II Heritage Cities nomination. This was something that Carol brought to the HDC's attention, that the National Park Service had this program to recognize communities, only one from every state, to be recognized for their contribution on the home front to winning World War II. And we really felt this was a natural fit for our community because we have Phoenix Mill. So yes, we did contact Richard Cox and Greg D'Onofrio from Critical Mass and okayed this through them before we ever started working on it. And they were happy to help with all the information about all the great restoration work that they have done to the mill. The really interesting thing is the National Park Service is really trying to highlight the contribution from the home front of women and minorities. And I think most people know that at Phoenix Mill, the workers were mostly women. So it's kind of unique. And Henry Ford paid them the same $5 a day that all the men down the road at Wilcox Mill made. So that was really unusual for the time. And this is a picture that we have permission from the Benson Ford Research Library out in Dearborn. We have permission to use this. And this shows our ladies here from Plymouth Township working to produce electrical harnesses that were used out at Willow Run to produce the B-24 Liberator.
And the application has been filed now with
Yes.
What department was that at the federal level? Was it Veterans or was it
It's the
Park
National
Service?
Park Service.
National Park Service.
Yep. So we did submit our application on May 31st, and we received an email confirmation that they have everything. We were able to get a letter of support from Congresswoman Dingell's office. And interestingly enough, her husband, while he was still alive, actually helped write the legislation that created this program.
And then if we are selected, it's my understanding that there has to be at least one World War II commemorative event every year.
We qualify because under criteria 1, wartime manufacturing, but number 2, the criteria had to be how do you honor the memory of these people that helped to defeat the Axis powers. So under criteria 2, it can be that you hold some type of annual event, or you have historic markers, or the restoration of a building. So of course we gave all the credit to Critical Mass for all the wonderful work that they did on this building, but there was talk of creating some type of annual event that would commemorate all the wonderful work that these people did to to help our country and Europe remain free.
Well, I think certainly a state historic marker is long overdue for this site. I mean,
Yes.
that's just.
Yeah, we would love to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we are wrapping up our other historic marker project, and there's been talk of doing a historic marker for the Salem train wreck as well.
Oh, definitely. Well, the Salem train wreck, I've been working with Northville on that one because that incident did occur in Northville Township. And as part of the MITC project, right now there's obviously a lot of construction going on the Northville side there. And at some point, once things settle down a little bit, I'd like to work more with Northville Lumber and the other company that's going in next door. Anyway, and see, if we can get them to help donate the funding for that as well. But that's another one I think is long overdue.
Yeah, absolutely. We would like to do an official state historic marker like we did out in front of Township Hall. Yeah, definitely one for Phoenix Mill.
Let me ask a question.
Yes.
When do you anticipate hearing back about the designation?
They've said it's going to be a couple of months, so probably fall, I would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you able to identify the people in that photograph?
I wish we could. I can ask the Benson Ford Research Center if they know who these ladies are. There's actually, much to my surprise, a lot of photos that were taken. I think Ford must have sent a photographer out to capture some pictures, but there's pictures from the 20s right up through the end of World War II.
The Plymouth Historical Museum may have some photographs that show names.
Okay. Great.
They'd all be at least 100 years old now.
No, at least.
Yes, John.
State historic markers now cost $4,800.
Wow.
I checked last week for my next door neighbor at 1158 Main Street. 40 years ago, my wife secured one for my law office and it cost $1,800.
I believe that is in the ballpark of what was paid for this one. Now, we did get a grant.
Well, Jack took
pay
care
for
of the
that.
expense of that and the Dempsey Fund.
Yes,
Yeah.
they paid for it, yeah. But
So-
it was right around $5,000. Yes,
Yeah.
they're not cheap. By comparison, our other little markers.
Well, the Northville
less
Chamber just hosted an event at the Phoenix Mill with the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce of Michigan, Jim Holcomb, with the Mayor of Holland, Michigan, Nathan Box, and with the City Manager of Northville describing the new development replacing the Downs Project, which Hunter Pasteur, I can't believe they interviewed 200 people in the last 3 years for that development that's going up there. And it's the second largest development in the state of Michigan next to the Hudson's building. So good things happening, but Phoenix Mill is in Plymouth Township.
Oh, yes.
And D'Onofrio's, both Greg and Kristen are just very admirable people.
They're wonderful people, yes. And I have to say, this is booked out through the end of the year. They have events, they have people renting the ground floor that you can see here. So they're doing well, which is wonderful to hear after all the hard work that they put into this. I don't know if a lot of people know, but in 2020, when the pandemic hit, Mr. D'Onofrio was there every day cleaning out every single pane of glass, which a lot of them had been broken out and replaced with wood, plastic, cardboard. I think anything that the Wayne County sign shop people could find, they stick it in the broken window. They replaced all 1,400 panes of glass in those windows. I mean, their level of detail is just amazing, and we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for saving that historic building.
Okay.
All right, and I think that's it.
That wraps it up.
I just want to say that, and I say this every year, but I really enjoy working with everybody on the HDC. Everybody works really hard to do the research and put in the hours and, uncover all of this great history that we have. I've lived in the township for 54 years. I learned something new every year. I mean, it's just amazing how much information is out there.
So thank you.
Yeah, and I also just, again, want to thank the other commissioners. You work without compensation, and you're doing it out of your love and admiration for the community, and we certainly respect your time and effort that you put into this. And, the Historic District Commission, as you mentioned, was basically the brainchild of trustee Jack Dempsey, who still resides in the township and is probably watching us on TV right now. But Jack, it was one of the recommendations, I believe, of the original Citizens Advisory Council, which we set up in 2017 to involve the public more in the decision-making process and future visioning for the township. And this is just another one of the many good ideas that came out of that. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're back to we are back to public comment. 3 minutes.
Wendy, nice presentation. You mentioned the B-24 Liberator, and my dad worked on that. Yeah, there's an assembler there, and I'm trying to gather more information as to what he did. So it was interesting to me. I'm Dale Bernhardt, and I'm continuing my discussion on Mr. Heisey's lack of transparency. So let's take a look at the bylaws and requirements regarding MITC. Remember, the Northville Downs site lies within MITC, Michigan International Technology Center. Many people have questioned me if I thought there were any financial improprieties concerning the development of this site. I've always said, I don't know, but I'm sure MITC and the state safeguards against bad financial behavior. Remember, Mr. Heisey is a MITC board member. So in reviewing the bylaws, I found this. The MIT officers and officials shall file an annual disclosure statement with the MITC secretary. The annual disclosure statement shall disclose the following financial interest of the officer or official or his or her immediate family in any company, business, or entity that has contracted with the MITC. The annual disclosure statement shall include a summary listing each business transaction with the MITC. If there is no reportable financial interest or transaction applicable to the officer or official and or immediate family of the officer, the annual disclosure statement shall contain a certification to that effect. What this means is regardless if there is or has not been any business transaction, an annual disclosure statement must be provided by every MITC officer and official and possibly family. This is state and MITC mandated. So I'm thinking, well, that's good, but let's FOIL these annual disclosure statements as allowed by the Open Meetings Act. So the FOIL form was sent to the Plymouth Township, who forwarded it to Miller Canfield, the attorney firm for MITC. They complied with the request and sent back the following. Our firm serves as legal counsel to the Michigan International Technology Center. The request was forwarded to me in such capacity, given that the records you are seeking are records related to MITC. Your request is hereby denied because the MITC does not maintain a record containing the information you requested. FOIA requires that when records are requested that do not exist, the public body must certify that the records do not exist. Please consider this letter as such certification. So, the MITC officers and MITC officials, again including Mr. Heisey, never for any year complied with the bylaws and state law requiring financial disclosure. Let that sink in, everybody.
Thank you very much,
Then you
sir.
may ask the question,
Thank
why
you very
not?
much.
And is something being hidden?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow. Okay, anybody else?
Hi, Bill Pine, 46-year township resident. I'm here to expand on thoughts I shared with you 2 months ago regarding smart meters. I talked with you then about health, which I won't revisit because nothing has changed, and financials, which I will. During my comments 2 months ago, Bob Dorshevitz acknowledged that a good analogy for the water meters is, in general, is that they're kind of like oil changes for your car. They're a cost, but one that you need to incur. After the meeting, I asked Bob if I could get more information on the financials to better understand this aspect of any water meter decision. Bob was very cooperative, gave me copies of the consultant spreadsheet so I could ask my questions more effectively. At this point, I want to digress momentarily and acknowledge Bob's open-mindedness, collegiality, and responsibility. I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
After reviewing the 3 spreadsheets that Bob shared with me, I gave him back a number of questions tied to specific cells or lines of multiple workbooks within multiple spreadsheets, as well as 2 very recent articles raising serious concerns about automated water meter reliability. Bob said he passed them back to the consultants to get good answers. The consultants sent back 8 answers, 3 related to manual meters and 5 related to automated meters. The answers for the manual meters were data-driven and generally reasonable, supporting the fact that they needed an oil change. I shared some execution-related thoughts with Bob regarding sourcing, features, and timing for him to use the seesaw fit with manual meters, but the need's real. The township needs to do something, but should be guided by a rational, frugal plan to do so. The answers for the automated meters were anything but okay. With apologies to Bob and Chuck Kermy, who have technical backgrounds, and anyone else who does as well that I don't know about, the reasons one generally uses automation are cost reduction, throughput increases, improved run-to-rate performance, improved first-time quality, and actual increased quality of grade for the effective product or service. None of these were addressed by the consultants. There was no cost reduction related to headcount reductions. They basically said that we should trust them that cost benefits would be generated later. With regard to the concerns about reliability, the consultant said that the problems were with electric meters or water meters of different design or water meters from other sources, and that we needed to trust them. There was no hard data. After reviewing the consultant responses, I suggested to Bob that there were 2 reasonable courses of action to take with regard to the automated meters. 1, get a legally enforceable guaranteed warranty or insurance policy from the supplier to keep the township whole in the event of underperformance, which probably no rational supplier will do. Or 2, postpone any decision on automation until we have hard data, at which time the township can decide if, how, and when any action should be taken on automation. There's also an unreasonable course of action that could be taken, and that would be to approve automated meters with no hard data. And if this course of action is taken, there is a pretty high likelihood that millions of taxpayer dollars could be spent on something that's not nearly as good as what we already have. So that would be really irresponsible. Please be responsible.
Okay, thank you. All righty, we're going to move on to board comments. If a board member wants to comment at this point, just raise your hand and I'll call upon you.
Sure.
John jumped to it, so go for it. John, you're on.
Go ahead.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters, Jackie Peters, Carrie Moon Dupre, et al. Their questions last night for an hour and a half on Zoom were focused, substantive, and helpful to the people of Plymouth Township. Those candidates who are here tonight, I appreciate them showing up on Zoom last night. I want to thank the concerned citizens for a week ago Monday. I'm a real traditional thing. You got to be out there among the people. You got to answer to the people. And in the library, there were 70 people last Monday night, June 3rd. And Susan Bondi is to be commended because there were Democrats, there were Republicans, there were whatever. One gentleman who just crossed his arms was a candidate for trustee. He had ENT, ear, nose, and throat surgery with a white bandage across his nose, and his wife appeared and spoke for him. That's how important he thought it was to be among the people and to talk to the people. And she did a really commendable job. I want to congratulate Rose Callahan. Chief, I thought we were going to get a report tonight. Opioids, marijuana, alcohol. 'Tis the season. There was a report that the chief investigator, the lady that you have underneath you, was the one involved in the significant drug bust.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I put that in my executive summary, John.
That was a
Okay, I'm
case
sorry,
where-
I didn't-
Yeah, it's in the executive summary, a detail. I mean, those cases can be sensitive, so, and when we're not the lead agency, I'm very reluctant to release information. But that was a case worked with the Drug Enforcement Administration in partnership with the Michigan State Police Comment Unit up in Macomb County, yeah.
Forgive me, Chief, one more time, what was her name?
Our task force officer is Caitlin Nicely,
Okay.
assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration.
I met her a
Group
year
8.
ago at your forum on opioid epidemic.
Yeah, ironically, the week before that bust, she, in this very room, she gave a presentation on One Pill Can Kill.
Okay.
And we had a nice, I wish there were more folks that showed up, but we had some high school and college-age students there and their parents, and I thought it was very effective.
As a general practice lawyer, it's the secret problem in Plymouth Township.
Well,
We
we're
used
not
to have
immune.
the number one alcohol, beer and wine drugstore in Michigan, used to be the CVS at the corner of Sheldon and Ann Arbor Road.
Yeah.
It's a problem, but it's never spoken.
Yeah, and it's, you know, John, we're not immune. You know, this community is not immune to the opioid problem in this country, no.
Thank you, Chief.
All set? Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, at some point in the not-too-distant future, I want to talk about the sidewalk program in terms of having funds available in that program to deal with some of the oddball situations that we're coming up with, like one in particular where we've had at least 3 instances where the person was charged for a slab that was clearly on the neighbor's property. And there's just, and we've had some other incidences where people had to pay to get their damages repaired, and we don't have a mechanism to pay them back. We don't have any way to do that without board authorization. So I would like to, I'll bring some ideas to the next meeting, and I'd like to discuss that, what we might be able to do about that.
This is for the next program,
Well,
not for 2023.
for next and current, there's a couple of situations in current, because the issue is that the property is drawn on the GIS system and it's imperfect. And so unless you actually had a survey, which would be, you know, crazy expensive, the boundaries are sometimes not real clear, and we have these incidences. And the problem is that these people shouldn't have to pay for it, but we don't have a mechanism to be able to waive that.
So the GPS is not accurate enough?
The GIS system.
But the GPS on site, the handheld device, I'm surprised that it's not. Usually that's within,
They use the GIS mapping tool.
well, maybe they need to move to
I
handheld.
don't know, you'd have to, Patrick's not here, I don't know how that system works.
That's really Jeremy, it's more of a.
Balding to deck or whatever, but there's a handheld device, but maybe we need to talk about that, you're right. I have one other question about that, is how are you policing to ensure that any repairs that were done that encapsulated or touched a township water or sewer structure is not to be billed to, that's always been our policy, not to be billed to the homeowner? So if there's,
Jeremy question
It's
again.
it's like a manhole cover or something like
Yeah,
that.
a gate.
If there's a sidewalk that impacts an asset or a pertinence of the township, like a manhole cover or.
gate valve,
Something like that, yeah, we always, I mean, if.
we just need to make
We
sure.
always fix that at our expense.
Yeah.
But we need to just make sure that that is policed well.
Yeah, that then becomes more of a Felrath, Jeremy
Yeah,
question.
it would never make it into the sidewalk program to begin
No.
with if it was a special repair done because of,
Same way with driveways, we've done driveways that way too. So there are driveways with manhole covers
yeah.
right in them, and their lifespan is not great.
Bob, just one point on what you said earlier about a potential ordinance. We could look at it in terms of being retroactive as well, to take care of those citizens that have overpaid.
Yeah, there's been a few, and it's an unfortunate situation to get wound into. So, okay, I'll bring more detail next time.
Okay. Anybody else? Jerry?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I would like to.
Your thing.
Yes, Mr.
My thing.
Supervisor, I would like to to thank Mr. Ladderwick and Mr. Pop for stepping forward to help their fellow citizens out. And this type of activity needs to be praised. Their names don't need to be dragged through the mud to score real cheap political points by small-minded people. Additionally, Kelly Ladderwick, a longtime employee who operates our billing for water systems here in the township, has done a great job for us. She, again, does not deserve to have her name dragged through the mud to score cheap political points by small-minded people. Additionally, Ashley Sanders, who is a one-year employee here, who applied for the position here, was interviewed with a number of people, was selected as the best candidate for the position, and the year that she's been here has done nothing but an outstanding job and has sought and always asked, can I do more? How can I get more training? What else can I do to help here at at the Township of Plymouth? Again, these people are to be praised, not to have their names dragged through the mud by small-minded people to score cheap political points. And I want to thank you again for stepping up and being volunteers, and thanking all of the employees here in the township for the work that they do for the citizens.
Knowing how efficient you are, absentee ballots out in 2 weeks from today, like Livonia?
What? I don't have the ballots. I don't have the ballots.
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But in anticipation, 2 weeks from today.
When we get the ballots,
8 weeks from tonight is the primary.
I'm cognizant of when it is, Mr. Stewart, and when we get the ballots, we will efficiently and in great order get them out in a very timely fashion,
But you can't
as we
mail-
always have.
You can't mail them now, why?
Because I don't have any.
They don't exist.
They don't exist.
Because we still have candidates that are still trying to challenge their eligibility for the ballot. One on the state level and at least maybe one locally too. So, anybody else?
Yeah, I have something to say. Wendy, how long has your commission been in operation here in the township?
Since 2018.
2018, okay. Awesome. Well, you're blazing an amazing trail. Our commission, the Veterans Commission, is coming up on their one-year anniversary. And I'm taking a lot of notes on your presentations and all the information that we're really enjoying as a public, you know, just because I sit up here, I'm enjoying it personally as well. Having said that, I just had a meeting with Supervisor Heisey and Commissioner Tanana, and we are working towards putting together an annual 9/11 ceremony with some interesting guest speakers that we are working on. As well as tomorrow is Women Veterans Recognition Day. I know for those of us, like myself, who are a veteran, we worked very hard to be able to get into the military, but I can tell you, for me personally, I don't need a special day. I worked very hard, and I want to be included with the veterans, not to be excluded out into my own special day. But, you know, if you want to buy me a donut, that's fine. At any rate, I think it's pretty cool. Thank you all. I see a few faces that were on the forum last night, some that weren't there. Sorry, I couldn't be at the one last week. I had a major sickness myself, so I was out, but that's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes. I have two questions. One, you can do at the end is a summary of what went on today with the Northville Downs lawsuit. There was a court, somebody referred to something that happened today?
The scheduling conference.
Okay, well, need a little explanation on that.
I'll
And
be happy
second
to.
is a short summary, maybe I missed it. Was there a press release? Have we changed suppliers for trash pickup?
Yeah.
Or is it coming?
I'll talk about that. That's on my list. Yeah, I'll address that. Yeah.
I too, like John, wanted to thank the League of Women Voters. Last night we had a very lively discussion, the candidates, and I appreciate that. I thought the questions were fair and honest, and it was a delight to meet the other candidates. There's so many good people that are running. I would have been there last Monday. I did let Susan Bondi know that I had to work. I'm a pharmacist, as many of you know, And in the healthcare profession, you just can't take off. It's very difficult. So I know somebody said to me, to whom much is given, much is expected. That's easy to say in some professions, not easy to do, to carry out in the medical profession. I don't think the patients I serve would like to hear that. Because they're number one. And so no offense to anyone as to why I wasn't there. I'm sorry that I could not be there. But I thank you for at least, listening to me on that topic. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right. So our next board meeting is June 25th. As of now, we have 4 items tentatively scheduled for the agenda. The first one will more than likely be the GFL priority waste hauling contract assignment. So we have a contract with GFL that expires in 3 years, and there is in that contract what's known as an assignment clause, and that gives them the right to assign the contract, to hand the contract over to another operator. Before that happens, though, we as the board have to approve that assignment. So I've been working with GFL and Priority. We received our formal letter from GFL via certified mail late last week. But I've already met with GFL. I've already had several phone calls with Priority. And so, Kevin, what we're waiting for right now will be a draft resolution that Priority is supposed to provide for us. If we do not get it in a timely manner, then I'll ask you to work up a resolution. A couple things that I would like to see in the resolution is that we reiterate the fact that Priority will adhere to the terms and conditions of the current GFL contract. Specifically, but not limited to, we do not want any roll-on trash containers. We already have them for recycling. We deliberately did not want them for trash. Also, we know that GFL has been very generous in terms of picking up virtually anything that you put out at the curb is picked up, and as long as it's not construction debris. And so
Or headstones.
Or headstones, yeah, gosh. So we're hoping that they will adhere to that policy as well under the contract. Those are 2 big things, and again, we'll talk to Sarah Wiesel to see if she has any other items. But look, service has been poor throughout Southeast Michigan over several months. And in my personal opinion, Priority has told me that they have been buying out machines and mechanics and trash trucks and personnel. They have been buying them out over time from GFL. And so I think the word on the street was that a takeover was imminent, and I think GFL was just overwhelmed between the slow takeover of Priority, and also just the fact that it's still a very competitive business. It's very hard for us to hire people. It's hard for us to hire people. It's hard for GFL and Priority to hire people as well. So again, we had to fine GFL $20,000 for their lack of compliance under the contract. I know Sarah has been just doing terrific work upstairs as our environmental services coordinator, taking the phone calls of residents. I think for the most part, people are understanding, but we gotta remember, folks, that this is a transition period. It's not gonna be perfect. GFL, I believe, has improved their service level within the last week to 10 days. But there may be continued glitches in the system, especially as this transition takes place. Now, Priority is telling us that they will be officially on board by July 1st, which I just think is overly ambitious. They are assuming 77 different municipal contracts throughout Southeast Michigan. So GFL is getting out of the residential trash business. They will continue to provide commercial service. And we do have a commercial contract with them to handle this building and the fire stations and the parks and the golf course. So we expect that they will continue serving us in that capacity. But it is going to be a time of transition. We just ask again for your patience as we transition over to Priority. Okay?
Is Priority using white trucks?
GFL, due to the many complaints that they were getting, they are renting the white trucks. So if you see a white truck on the road, that is a GFL truck that's being rented. Eventually, the priority folks will come in with their yellow trucks to replace the lime green trucks that GFL has. So that's what's going on there.
But we're keeping our same
We are
recycle
keeping our,
bin?
yes.
Are they
we're-
putting a new sticker on it?
No, we're gonna keep our same recycling bins, and everything, nothing is supposed to change. So we will continue keeping our recycling bins, the way they are. So we wanna certainly hold them to that. Now, once that contract expires, it's gonna be a new world, and so we're gonna have to deal with that, at that time.
Well, I would encourage, especially during the transition, to not put the recycle bin out until it's full. That way it reduces the labor and the number of stops.
Yeah.
Because it takes just as much work and labor to do a partially full as 100% full.
The other issue is yard waste, and they just don't have enough trucks on the road right now, GFL, to handle the yard waste. And there's also issues with where the yard waste is dumped in Salem Township, of course, where next to the landfill, and the hours of operation are not the same as they are for the landfill. So there's some factors there. I know Canton and maybe some other communities are looking at doing yard waste only on Saturdays. So we're not there yet, but the idea would be everybody put their yard waste out on Saturday, and then they'll come and get it. Interesting. I'm open to suggestions on that, but apparently that is what Canton may be doing in the future with priority.
You mean as an ongoing or as a workaround temporary?
I know, as an ongoing thing, just to make it more efficient for the pickup. But again, that is not happening here, so right now we expect things to stay the same, although the transition will be difficult. So June 25th, we're looking at that assignment resolution. We have a planned unit development for what we call the personal warehouse. This is on Schoolcraft Road, down east of the Sikh temple, and kitty corner from Wabasto. This is a new concept where basically you can rent a room, like a garage, to work on a vehicle or woodworking or artwork or anything like that. So it's kind of like a man cave, she shed concept all linked into one, and you rent it, and so that might be coming to us. We've heard nothing new on the Vic Tanny site right now. We're not bothering them, and they have not submitted anything to us. So I'm just kind of putting that off on the back shelf for now. We have townhomes coming in on Sheldon Road. This would be north of the Hilton Gardens on the east side. So they would be occupying some of the site currently owned by St. John's Resort. So St. John's Resort is, of course, owned by the Pulte Family Trust, and these townhomes are going to be built by Pulte homeowners. So, maybe it's a distinction without a difference, but it's Pulte that will be building these townhomes.
This is in addition to the 8 acres that was cut out previously?
This
or it is the 8 acres?
This is more than likely the 8 acres. I would have to double check with Laura, but they are looking at, how many units, Bob? 70?
I don't remember.
17 or 70?
I don't remember.
A lot. So that will be going in, that will be before us on June 25th. We'll probably have the fire contract for our firefighters, and right now, that's all we've got for June 25th. Couple questions from tonight's meeting. As far as people who want to apply for boards and commissions, you can fill out a form online and you submit it to the clerk's office. The clerk will route it to the appropriate individual, which 90% of the time is me. And then I make, under state law and township ordinance, I make a recommendation to the board, and the board can either accept or reject that. We ask that all of the applicants always submit a resume or vitae of some sort, and we make the decisions based on that. And obviously, even planning commission, these are volunteer positions, and we look for people who really are looking out for the best interest of the township, and who have the education and experience, especially Mr. Ladowick, who is a home builder, Mr. Pop here, who is an engineer. These are men with a great deal of intellectual capability that they bring to the table. And to refer to them as bureaucrats or administrative functionaries is really insulting, and it deters people from serving as volunteers in our community. Again, thank you, gentlemen.
Who controls that form, the application form?
It's online.
Online.
You can fill it out.
I recommend you take off the social security number so people don't make
comes later.
I know, but so they don't make mistakes and disclose personal information.
Yeah, we do that. We remove, the social security number is on there in the event that you are
Getting wages.
compensated.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
If
but-
someone were to, if some employee was to disclose that, they would not be working here anymore.
Yeah, so we're okay, we knock that out when the application comes over. Northfield Downs, so what happened today is what's known as a status conference, a scheduling conference. This is normal procedure in the federal courts and in the circuit courts. It is not a settlement conference. It's not a meeting of the minds to try to settle a lawsuit or anything like that. It is just to figure out what the schedule would be for motions, for discovery, and for other things that come along through the normal litigation process. As far as the answer that the township provided to the court, it's funny, I saw the complaint on email, but I never saw the answer distributed in email. A standard answer in any legal proceeding is to either acknowledge or deny the allegations that are made, and to, in any respect, to always call for the dismissal of the case. That is standard procedure whenever you're filing an answer to any complaint. You basically are saying the complaint has no merit. That's what you do. And you don't have to state all the reasons why. You're just saying that it does not have merit. And you can attack some of the individual points either as requiring more information or denied or accepted in some cases, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. We still have not filed a motion to dismiss. Because when you file a motion to dismiss, especially in federal court, you want to get it right the first time. So we are relying on the law. We're relying on precedent, okay? We're not going in there with guns blazing. Now, when I say something in the public domain, I say that this lawsuit is frivolous, and I stand by that as a 33-year lawyer in the state of Michigan. And it's a frivolous case. It's based on a civil rights case. I don't know, I don't remember life, liberty, and the pursuit of horse racing in the Constitution. So good luck with that argument. Our attorneys have to be a little bit more polite than me. So they have to make their dismissal motion based on the law and precedent. And we will take that up with the court in due time. But again, we want to get that right.
Because you only get one shot at it.
You only get one shot at it, Counselor, you're absolutely right. I'm not really concerned what the Michigan Gaming Board says about Northfield Downs. They have met with the Horsemen's Association. They said that they are working on a deal with Handy Township and also with the racetrack, the fairgrounds there in Fowlerville. If you drive to, what's so funny? What's so funny, John? Why are you laughing?
If you won't interrupt me, I will tell you that the executive director of the Michigan Gaming Control Board said North Fowlerville was built in 1947. It would take more than $1 million to update it, and he told me that I could take my pony and walk. Don't interrupt me.
Aye.
Wow.
And he told me I could take my pony there and walk it around at the county fairgrounds in August.
Well, thank you for advocating.
So there's no reality. No, I'm not advocating
thank
for
you
that.
for advocating
I'm advocating
for
for
Mike
the
Cox.
truth. We
For
have
Mike
motions
Cox
in
and the
limine
Carlo
in
brothers.
August of 2025.
Thank you, John.
We have a trial date of October 1 of 2025. And
yeah,
you have no dismissal.
That's what
And I've been called for a deposition, and I will submit to the court. There you always talk over everybody. Just keep talking.
Sorry, John.
AA meetings are every morning at 9:30 at First Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
AA meetings are every morning at First Presbyterian Church. If you need it,
what's your point?
Go to the AA meeting.
That is
every
slanderous.
morning at
That is
9:30.
Very slanderous.
No, you're
That's slanderous. You're slanderous.
You're a disgrace.
You are a slanderous. That is a horrible slanderous allegation. So I'm going to try to stay focused on the task at hand here. Shut up, sir. Please, you're interrupting. This is not your meeting, and we are not going to have cat calls from the audience, okay? Very insulting, not surprised. Anyway, so the lawsuit is not dismissed. I never said it was. We will file our motion in due time. Right now, the Carlo brothers are negotiating with Handy Township. They are also negotiating with the folks there at the Fowlerville Fairgrounds. In the meantime, if you drive out to Ridge and 5 Mile right now, the property is for sale. They're asking $12 million, and they've already had several offers, I'm not going to say offers, but several inquiries, especially for companies that are interested in settling near the Nell hydrogen facility, which is still scheduled to come across the street. So again, the facts are stubborn things, and the fact remains that the land is for sale, the Carlos are moving, and if you want to take the side of Mike Cox and the Carlo brothers, then you're certainly free to do that, but it's at odds with the best interests of Plymouth Township residents.
So what's the next step? What's the next step?
A motion to dismiss. That will be filed by our attorney in due time.
Oh, so we don't have a specific date we have to file that by?
No.
Motion to
If you have-
dismiss.
Motion to
I'll offer the
dismiss
motion to
and a
dismiss.
to be determined date.
Yeah. There is a timeline in which we have to file any motions to dismiss. But again, that's not going to be based on, it's going to be based on the law and precedent, okay? And
Not the judge saying you have to give you have to have it by a certain date.
we would want to have the judge make the ruling on the motion to dismiss, but that's what we would hope to do in the first round. And if we're not successful, then it goes to discovery, which means a bunch of emails and letters going back and forth, and we'll state our case at that point.
So there's a
And
tentative,
depositions of John Stewart and Robert Dorshevitz.
Okay.
tentative court date of October 1, 2025?
Star of Stage Screen and Treasurer's Office.
I'm sorry, I can't hear over the din. So what's the question?
What was that, Kermit?
What was the
question?
tentative date? Is it October 1 for court?
The trial date is October 1, 2025. We have a lady who wants to
kinda thought-
remain,
I thought he was asking our
anonymous
city township
because she is
attorney.
following this case on Pacers. A citizen of Plymouth Township, very intelligent woman, sitting in this room, is following the case on Pacers at her own expense.
Fine. But unaware of how the
So
litigation
if you say anything
process
contrary
works.
to what the Michigan Gaming and Control Board say,
Sir,
or
you
what
are-
the Pacers are,
Sir,
no, you
I
are
cannot-
incorrect.
I cannot
And if
argue
you're
this
practicing
level
law,
of stupidity. So
you're-
Kevin, the question was
you're
asked
out
of
of
you
touch.
as I recall.
you're out of touch.
From a
Motion to
procedural,
dismiss for the meeting.
You're
May I answer
you're
the
out of order.
question?
Kevin, somebody asked you a question. Could you answer
from a
it?
procedural standpoint, what was held recently was the scheduling conference. That is routinely done in virtually every civil case. What happens at a scheduling conference is that the judge meets usually telephonically or via Zoom video to discuss with the attorneys how long discovery will take, how long will trial take, and from that, the judge issues a scheduling order. The scheduling order sets forth specific deadlines. There will be a discovery cutoff deadline and a trial date. Before the trial date, I expect that the township will file a motion for summary judgment. It's phrased summary judgment in federal court, not summary disposition. A summary judgment can be based upon law or no genuine issue of fact. I am not exactly sure what the township's litigation counsel will do in this case, but it will be based on one or both of those criteria.
Thank you.
Okay, the case is 5 months old, but let me say
And
the positive
scheduling
is
orders,
that
Kevin,
if you sell
scheduling
the
orders
property-
can be amended as
If you sell the
well.
property, then we have mitigated.
I have a
the
question of the
actions.
attorney, not
Oh,
you.
excuse me.
So Kevin, scheduling orders can be amended, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm in an office. with
All
a
right,
legal practice
so
in court.
we're all set. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Monahan, is there a second? Second by clerk Forba. We are adjourned. And we're sundowning too, big time, wow. Holy cow.